of Adjustments and Appeals. I want to call this meeting to order. You want to call roll, Precious? We have minutes from the January 24th meeting. They've been distributed to all of us. Is there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
I move for approval of the minutes as presented.
Thank you. John seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Precious.
We have, let's see, appeal of a decision or determination or order of notice of the building official from Dedrick Messenger. Mr. Jones, you want to introduce the case?
Yes, sir. I'd be glad to. Vice Chairman Lynch. So previously, back in the fall sometime, we put a condemnation on 404 Kings Highway. The roof was sagging and there was a state of collapse. So we condemned that building. We sent the letter, condemnation letter to Mr. Messenger to no longer occupy that building until a solution was agreed upon to fix that. Originally, kind of give you a background back on this case, there was, when we were first notified about that, there was a different ownership that was involved in that church. There was a structural engineer who did a report on that about the roof. Once the report was done, that building was sold to Mr. Messenger. I don't believe Mr. Messenger knew that report existed until after he purchased the building and then realized that we had a demo notice order on that building. So Mr. Messenger appealed back in January, went before the board, stated his case and just wanted more time overall to come up with a solution to either how to figure out how to get the funds to either demolish the church or repair the church if it could be repaired. So the board gave him 6 months. Mr. Messenger came back a few weeks ago. This is only month number 5. And I think he wants to get going with his plan. So we agreed to bring it back before the board before his 6 months was up, since he agreed that he had a plan. So just to kind of give you guys a heads up, we do have I don't know if you guys have the original structural engineer report. We can maybe get some copies made and get those guys to get that to you. But we also have Mr. Warren. He is the structural engineer on record who did this report originally. If there are any questions about the report, but I'll let Mr. Messenger come up and state his case and what his plans are for the church.
Mr. Messenger, thank you for coming today.
No, yeah,
Go ahead.
Hey, how y'all doing today, man?
Good.
What we got, this is what we got. I've been shopping around trying to figure out what we could do. Found some help here. Say instead of putting a support beam, he was asking us to put a support beam in the church to support the roof, but found some guys that build to say that they could take the whole roof off and strengthen the walls and put a whole new roof on it as opposed to putting a support in an old roof and have all new parts to it. So that's why I'm here today, because we went to see if we could get a permit to do it. Then they said, well, we had to come before the board to state our case to see what we could do. So they said the solution was, after they looked at it, was to reinforce it and do all the stuff that needs to be done to it, but the best thing to do is just take the whole roof off, as opposed to putting a beam in it to try to strengthen it, and then you would have a whole new roof, whole new wall structure, and have everything there. I got Mr. Jerry Greer with me there. They're ones that say that they could do it for us with their crew, and save us some money on it if this would be the thing that y'all would allow us to do. Because right now, I mean, like you said, we didn't know this was like this. We bought the building, next thing you know, we stuck right here. So now, as a small congregation, we can't afford to have a church tore down and go try to find another one. Then we still got a note on just a building that don't have anything to, to work with.
So last, in January, we saw some design drawings, I think, from Warren Engineering for putting in some beams.
Yeah, and Philip's going to get you some copies of that.
Now, that's the old report, but now we're going to a different plan to replace the roof.
Right, the original report was just to, address the sagging of the roof, and it was a different design. At that point, that was trying to fix what was there. Now Mr. Messenger has proposed removing the roof completely, going back with a different design. And my suggestion is if we're going to change designs, we're going to need some more information, as far as your truss design. Because if your truss design, because that roof currently is almost built like a pyramid. It's not like your traditional gable. So if you do go back with something, depending on your truss design, I don't know what that's going to be, right? Nobody does right now. You can completely change your load path. And the current footings may not support, the design of a different roof. So, but anyways, Mr. Warren is here, who is initial structural engineer on record. But that's kind of my thought on that.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Warren, would you entertain questions?
Yes, sir, I would.
All right. Of course, the first question is there any, I assume the new trusses would be a package prepared by a lumber yard so that they would be stamping the truss drawings, right?
I would assume the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, we've already checked into trusses and all that stuff. It'd be brand new. Everything going up is going to be brand new and into codes for as what we're going to need. It's not going to be something, that's why we're asking you guys,
Okay. Mr. Warren, did you see any distress in the exterior walls when you looked at the building?
Trying to figure a way to keep this a short answer. Would you like me to be up here or sit here? Can you hear me okay?
I hear you fine, Bob.
Let me stand up then just So my original scope of work, that's what this report is that you're going to see in a minute, was in response to the previous owner, Mr. Mayo's call, because the ceiling was sagging. And the reason the ceiling was sagging was because it started out as a single-family dwelling. So that original area was cut up into a couple of bedrooms and residence. So that part was gutted out. There, at some point, there was addition on the back of the house, but I don't know if that was previous or after it had become a church, or whether it was while it was still serving as a residence. But anyway, by taking out the interior walls, some bearing, some not bearing, the ceiling joists were lapped and nailed together, which helped to keep the side walls from pushing out, which would have been pushing out in all four directions because it's a hip roof in all four directions. And so by sagging down the way that it did, it was in one sense pulling in while the rafters are keeping it from pulling in, but they were pushing out, sagging real bad. And so my scope of work was to submit a plan that would prevent the ceiling from totally falling in. But as it is with structure, you can't just fix one thing, you set off another. So what I came up with was this LVL setting on bearing points that didn't exist prior to. So I think Mr. Murray is familiar with, this hydraulic, pneumatically driven steel pier system that we've been using for some years around here, rather than trying to go underneath and form and pour footings and build piers. The reason we do that is we find that whenever you put a new significant point load in place where there's never been that kind of load, even though the old building is there and it's settled some, you can create a new settlement on your new point load. So by driving these to rock, I can know that at least the new stuff is going to stay put, and it'll go a long way toward helping to keep the rest of it from falling in on itself. So I think your question was, did I see anything going on with the walls? And I know that I've taken it beyond that. The roof truss option that you're talking about has a lot of merit. I would suggest to you, it's free, but instead of going back with a truss roof, put gables on at least the front and the back, or instead on the left and the right. What that does is it puts two walls in bearing rather than creating all this pushing, pulling, and thing that's going on. But what you'll be confronted with is that, before I get beyond that, you are assuming that this would be a package system, and so that everybody else understands what he was getting at, is that trusses under codes require an engineer seal. And so truss manufacturers employ their own engineers, and so they will submit to the contractor, saying give it to the building department a set of documents that bear his seal, and also calculations to show what the loads are. It's up to the guy that's setting the trusses to be certain that the walls and the foundation system can handle the loads of the trusses, because now it moves the loads around. So, in my opinion, I'm not speaking for codes, but what you need is a foundation plan also, and an examination of those walls, make sure that it's going to handle the loads. With trusses, well, with any structure, you've got live and dead loads. With the trusses, you gather up a lot of area, and so you get a lot of load under wind load conditions and under snow load. And it has to eventually, all of it, get delivered to the earth. So I would expect, what little bit I could see from peeking underneath there, that you're probably going to need to budget for some foundation work to make sure that now these greater loads would be carried by the foundation system, because the foundation system you've got right now, from what I saw, I believe is going to be able to handle it. It's not just a matter of the spacing of the piers, but when you put that, now doubling the loads at least on those walls, then the rim joists, which are acting as a beam between the piers you've got, they're going to see twice the load that they've got on them now, and they're already deflecting under that load. So it winds up being like a string of dominoes a little bit, but that don't mean it's not doable.
Mr. Warren, I've been given a note. Can you please step to the podium, because the recording people need to hear you, even though we're here and you're fine, okay?
Start all over with. Sorry, Bob.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jones, this would require a building permit, I assume?
Yes, sir.
And so you would need plans, and what they would submit would probably be the shop drawings from the truss manufacturer showing the truss designs, and they would be engineering drawings. What would you normally require is for confirmation of the bearing capacity of the walls?
At that point, we would probably have a structural engineer design the foundation and the footing based upon the design of the trusses or the system or the layout of the roof, to be sure that it's adequate to support that.
Yeah, to transfer that reaction all the way down to the ground.
Right.
Okay. Mr. Warren, do you know, were there continuous footings under the walls, or did you ever get that far? or if they were?
No, they were, as I recall, I looked at this, by the way, in December of 2001.
Yes.
So it's been a minute, which is my way of saying if I'm stupid and wrong, you'll forgive me. But as I recall, this is a pier-type perimeter foundation system. I think it's brick rather than block.
Okay.
Not that that's necessarily problematic in and of itself, but I am very confident it's not a strip-type footing that we could take advantage of. It is underpinned with a variety, or at least a couple of different types of materials, and maybe y'all will recall and help me out here, but I think it's pressed tin, like the 5V roofing, but it's pressed in a pattern that looked like rock face block, if I remember right. So that helps keep the dogs and the cats from having puppies and kittens under the house, and helps keep the pipes from freezing a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you. Do we have someone who wants to speak?
Yes, I would.
Would you step to the podium, please, sir? Tell us your name, if you would, let's start.
Well, my name is Jerry Greer. I've been in construction for 44 years, and I deal with a lot of structure. And also, I understand, I agree with some of the things the gentleman was saying, but there's always more than one way to do something for a structure. And like he was talking about the piers on it, around the outer perimeter of the building. And as well, he's talking about the LVLs. A lot of people don't understand, like, as far as the engineering aspect of it. The LVLs, it depends on the size of the LVLs. As far as on a low-bearing wall, you just said bearing wall, but you all know what a low-bearing wall is, don't you? It what holds the weight on the outer perimeter. But on the very ends, it doesn't really have the weight because it's self-supporting from the low-bearing walls. Am I correct on that?
If trusses are used.
Yeah. Now, going to the trusses now. As far as the trusses, we was talking about, I looked at the structure as well, and looking on there, he's talking about the piers and stuff like that, which I have done buildings in Shelbyville on the square. We've used as much as pushing up certain areas, as much as 100 tons. We use several jacks. And I've brought some buildings on the square in Shelbyville as much as 100 tons. And that church is nowhere near 100 tons. Can't even touch it. And we brought those up. And also brought it to a satisfactory level as far as the floor and all that. And I done this when I was about 30 years old. I'm 68 right now. And I have, like I said, I have 44 years of experience of structure. And as far as he's talking about the weaving, the bobbing, and all this, when you have say anywhere from a 6, 7, 12 pitch on a structure, snow and ice don't stay up there long, as much as a 412. A 412, it don't, as far as a roof, even shingles, anything like that, it don't last as long. The higher you go up, the longer the roof lasts. Going back to the structure, talking about the piers, you might want to ask the question, just say over here, just say, don't use this room for example. Just say that's a low-bearing wall, this is a low-bearing wall back here. Now, when you do that on low-bearing wall, what we'd have to do, and you just say you have to put piers underneath, or dead center, maybe a double pier, one on each side coming up. First of all, how would you shoot that grade? How would you shoot that grade? I'm asking the gentleman here, how would you shoot that grade? You can't do it with a transit. How would you get the grade from the outside of piers and inside to the other side?
Zip level.
Beg your pardon?
Zip level.
What's a zip? I don't even know what zip level is. What's a zip level? I do things the old school way. I know I do.
Well, take advantage of technology when it's available and affordable. Zip level is there's a base unit and an end unit connected to each other by a hollow tube. And so you set your base level in one spot, that's your that's the point you're always going to refer to.
You have to start at one point.
So then you spool out your cord, and when I bought, I don't have to go that far, so it's 50 foot long. And on the end of that is a device, of course, it's connected to this base unit. So I set it up, I zero it out so that both ends of this are reading the same, and then I walk through anywhere within 50 feet of that base unit and determine what the elevation of the spot I set it down on would be relative to the spot that I started with, and check it. It would be, in the end of the day, as far as how you would do the math, figure out where you are, the same as using a surveyor's level or a transit or a laser level. It's just that instead of using a laser light or a straight line of sight, which, you look through one instrument and see the rod, this thing, you can go around the corner or into another room, and by being connected with this cord, is registering within itself the relative pressures.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, so it's got a digital display right there going to tell you within a 16th of an inch on that display whether you're higher or lower.
Right. Okay, now, I'm going to tell you another way, old school way, and it works. It's very simple. You go to this point over here, go to this point, okay, now we're talking about this structure, the church. Go to this point over here, over there, pull a string. You want to know how to get your center girder? Come off of that string. Dig your piers. I've had guys going to houses, couldn't get on the joists. A guy named Timmy, a little bitty guy. You had to get on the joists and turn like this. We brought the building up. Matter of fact, we brought a house up. It works. All right, you go over here, you put something in the ground. Doesn't matter what it is. Put a rod, piece of steel, rebar, it doesn't matter. Do the same thing on each side. And when you come to that point, you put a line level, pull that thing, guitar string tight. I don't care if this, you have a heel over here or this end's low. When you put that footer down, you pull that, you come to that point. When you rebar over that, mark it. You determine how far you go down on this side, determine how far you go on this side. You could even have step levels into a heel. It works. By the time you get your structure down, raise it up and let it down. A lot of times your wall, like you said, edges are like that, up and down, roller coaster. On the top, we start using these all the jacks, that building's gonna move. What I use I-beams, put across the joists, work a little bit at a time. And as you get it up to high, I have a guy in my hometown, to lay the block. You space your block according, period, so far apart, period, where you could use fill-in block later on. But you just want a period to get it up where it holds your supporting walls, your low-bearing walls. Use a double LVL on each side, turn them up edgeways. Screw them together. But you got to have a plate on top. Now you probably ask this question, when you put that LVL is straight, am I correct? They're strong, right? It determines the span, how far they...
In their wide direction,
Okay.
no bow in their weak direction.
Oh, we use strings on that, brother. And believe me, I could move them.
Mr. Greer, do you know what the existing exterior walls are composed of?
I can't hear you, what you say.
Do you know what the existing exterior walls are composed of?
I believe it's, now, you talking about the framing part?
Yes.
Oak,
The
I
sheet.
believe you have a lot of oak in there. And underneath you have a combination of oak and pine
Okay.
underneath the joint.
Are they 2x4s? Are they 24 on
A
center?
little bit all different sizes under there.
Okay.
And also you have some, I looked under there, been under there, and like he was saying, it's more or less has tin and stuff propped up around
Okay.
it. It's the old way they done it.
The outside sheathing, is that plywood or is that lumber? Do you know?
I don't know.
Let me jump in for a second. We wanted to do the walls over, but you guys said we couldn't do them over because we would be tearing the building down to a point that you said it would have to have new codes on it. So we wanted to just, leave everything and go up from that point and do everything new from the outside around. But, he said, we can't do that.
Okay. Mr. Jones, what is it that they're asking for the board to waive or to do?
The initial appeal was the appeal of the demolition order.
Okay, got it.
All right. So there is something in place where once this building is demolished, they're not allowed to rebuild it
That's what he's talking.
due to a planning statute. So that is, Mr. Messenger's right about that. So once the building's demolished, it will not be able to be rebuilt on that lot. So that's kind of where we are with it, so.
So is removing the roof considered rebuilding?
There's a certain percentage, I would have to check with our planning department. I don't think that would be enough of the percentage. It's a high percent, so.
Okay. And so they're proposing right now to replace the roof. And they would have to bring, again, plans to your office, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So is that what we want to approve, is that replacing the roof is an acceptable alternative to the support system?
Yeah, I'm worried about the foundation. Right. I mean, it's, you can put a new roof on it or whatever, I know what he's saying, but we have no idea what's under there. I mean, under the piers, unless you're gonna put new piers or whatever. I mean, you can't just put them on that wall with the new
New piers, new piers,
pier.
new piers. Restructure the whole bottom.
So procedurally, you're here on the appeal of the demolition order. So if you were open to a motion and taking action today to hold that demolition order, continue to stay that for 6 more months to allow them to submit plans to the Building and Codes Department to allow for construction or roof replacement, then that would be an option. If someone were to make a motion.
Well, Mr.
consistent
Jones,
with that.
if they do new piers and stuff, they're gonna have to be
Structural.
permitted?
That would have to be permitted as well. I mean, the whole project would be permitted, obviously.
But we're really not talking about that at this point.
We're just talking about if we would accept the roof replacement.
I think we're talking about just continuing to let them not have to demolish, correct?
Yes.
And so,
Thank you.
and so if we do that, can they pull a permit once they have an acceptable plan, or does it have to come back to the board? Or can we term a motion in such a way that if they have an acceptable plan, then the stay can, or the order can be removed by the codes official?
Well, I'm assuming you can make a motion however you see fit, but, you know, in my mind, there's just got to be a time limit to it. You know, we can't say,
Keep going.
we can't keep going. And 3 years down the road, we have a structure that Mr. Messenger's not occupying and still sitting there, so I feel like there's got to be a time limit where we can either, you know, come back before the board, and if we haven't moved forward or made any progress, then we make a ruling one way or another, but
So the system that he's talking about is going to require some engineers to do foundation, structural. How long, do you have any idea how long it's going to take your contractor engineers to draw that up?
I don't know, man. I mean, you know, it's according to how, you know, what people can do, you know. It's been so hard, man, just since I left here, trying to find people that would just, you'd be surprised, the guys that say they're gonna show up and never show up.
I think we all feel that pain.
If I tell you that next week, you know, hey, man, I got a guy coming this month. Man, I've had 5, 6 guys never showed up, you know, and That's a hard question for me to answer. I'm just being honest with you, being that, but I mean,
I think everybody up here has
I'm
probably
not
experienced that a
here
little.
just
Yeah.
waste y'all time, man. I mean, I bought this church, man, in the best interest of my congregation. And we fell into this, man, you know, when we could have went somewhere else, but now we tied up in it. We just trying to,
Bob?
you know, trying to make it right. You know, we bamboozled, as I say, man.
I'm going to make an offer to you
Okay.
that I will do whatever invasive inspections would need to be done on the perimeter and on the walls for a truss roof. I'm not designing the trusses because the manufacturers do that, but I can calculate what the loads would be because whereas the gentleman just ahead of me was talking about how snow doesn't stick on that type of roof as steep as it is, but we're going to put a different roof on, so we need to decide what the slope will be and then see if you'll agree to put a gable roof on there. But I can calculate what the wind loads, which is really the greater of the loads that I would expect that we'd have to deal with there, and what that would involve. The wind loads creates both downward forces, uplift forces, and shear. So it's going to want to rack the raw wall out of square and plumb. I believe the question or comment was made, or a question was asked about the type of exterior sheathing. I believe it to be diagonally applied 1 by 6, you know, so it's 3/4 by 5.5, which structurally is actually a favorable system and would be more expensive than going back with OSB, for instance. Even if you just had a stack of OSB and a stack of 1 by 6 sitting there, you'd structurally rather have the 1 by 6. It would be more expensive, though, than new OSB, so that's why you see OSB used. It's just less expensive. My point is, though, that we don't really know what condition that's in. We don't really know what condition the rim joist is around it, the rim joist being the joist that the other joists frame into. It's going to be put into service behaving a bit like a beam between the piers. So I can map out where the piers are and whether or not those rim joists can handle that kind of load. If not, what do we have to do to them to get them to handle the load that's there? And then figure out whether or not the existing piers are going to handle it. And if not, and I don't expect that they will, what do we have to put in place to make it sufficient? Now, I'm going to respond to something you said too, and I'm not arguing with him, just pointing out an observation, that my experience with buildings of this age is that it is, well, the juice isn't worth the squeeze to try to get it square, plumb, and level. It's been there close to 100 years, if I remember, or more. And so, as it sat there that long, the deflections that we get now are not just elastic deflections, meaning that if you load something, it bends, you take the load off, it goes right back where it was. We've got plastic deformation, so the bends are permanent. The worship was occurring in there before it got shut down, and I've never worshiped with y'all, but I don't think you have to have square, plumb, and level and flat to worship.
Okay, now, I was talking about the piers on outside. See what we do, I take a beam, run across that beam, I can go 20 foot at a time, but I have 2 beams. And actually, outside of the structure won't have anything under there. And what we do, we'll pour a footer.
I do understand what you're saying. And what I'm offering when I say I'll do the engineering for you is that if y'all can live with the undulations that are there now, I can design something you can put in place that will be a lot more cost effective, meaning it ain't gonna cost you as much.
Okay.
if you're willing to accept that. If what you're wanting is to restore this thing like Washington slept there, then, that's more than what I'm offering. All right, so, with what I've promised and on my plate right now, it'll be a couple of months before I can get serious down onto this, but what I can do is to get the ball rolling, meaning get the information you need to pass on to whoever you choose to manufacture your trusses, then you can get in line so that when I've got my part done, you'll be that much closer to getting some nails driven.
Permits.
Okay. So what we can do as a board then is to extend the put a hold on the demolition order for 6 months to allow an alternative approach.
Is that okay?
We probably ought to go on record to say that we find acceptable the idea to replace the roof as a viable option, provided proper engineering's provided. Does someone want to make a motion?
Yep, I just want to hear a motion to that effect.
So, yeah, again, we're here just to put a stay on the demo order for,
Yeah, today was more of a status conference to allow you to say what your plan was, Mr. Messenger, and give us an explanation of what all had happened in the last 5 months. So that gives us more information than we had and allows us a path to move forward.
So it sounds like you've got an engineer. Can we talk to Mr. Jones' point earlier, is we don't want to continue to have 6-month holds. And so we want to probably set some pretty clear benchmarks for what we expect you to have next time. And so sound like Mr. Warren would be well under his way and maybe done with his work by the time that 6-month come around. Is Mr. Greer going to do the work for you?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, I think by the time you come back next time, maybe there's a commitment on funding and Mr. Warren, some more commitments besides just Mr. Warren giving his time, I think. I don't think we want to come back and ask for another 6-month stay at that point. That would be, you'd be at the 2-year mark at that point, correct?
Right. Yeah, and one of the things, Mr. Messenger, is we want to, kind of, Mr. Taylor mentioned it, the funding's in place. We don't want you to, want you to know all the upfront cost. I don't want you to get into this thing and we have a structure halfway removed and run out of money. So it'd be good to know all your engineering costs, your construction costs, and be sure it's worth it, that you guys can afford to repair it.
Not that we're doubting that, we just want to see some real progress. Just wanted to be very clear on what our expectations, at least my expectations, the rest of the board can speak for themselves, but I think those are some reasonable expectations the next time we see you.
Well, I'll make a motion.
Mr. Murray.
6 months.
Mr. Murray has a motion.
Hold demo order, 6 months to allow the alternative, which would be a new roof.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there any other questions that you have, Mr. Messenger?
Do I have anything?
Yes, sir.
No, I'm going to meet with this gentleman here.
I would too. That's a good move.
Y'all talking to the wrong, I'm
Is it
just
not?
trying to do the right thing, man.
Okay.
I'm just trying to do the right thing.
All
I
right.
appreciate y'all listening to us, giving us an opportunity to try to get it right, man.
So
Yeah.
just to restate, you'll have 6 months from today.
Today.
Okay.
So let me ask this question. If we get something in place before, I can just call you again, Kevin, and what do we have to wait to the end of that 6 months, or what do we do?
It won't matter.
I feel like if you have enough supporting documents and everything in place,
When I get everything in place, I'll contact you.
yeah, we can talk, and if everything's there, I don't mind going before the board before 6 months if
Okay.
everything's there, and we feel like we got a good
Well,
plan.
we probably gonna need the 6.
Yeah, that's it.
You got a good,
You probably gonna need the 6.
All right, well, thank you again for coming. Mr. Jones, do we have any staff reports?
We have a few, I don't know, I guess the last time we met, I just became director. I have since hired an assistant director, Philip Burns. He's been with us for
couple years.
a few years. He is on a 1-year probation though, but he's been here 27 years, I think. So a great employee, a lot of knowledge. So I'm glad he became an assistant to help back me up. So that's one thing. The second thing, we have a few terms ending on the board, and I can get with you guys after the meeting or during the week. So Matt Taylor, Ben Blake, Miss Lester, and Mike Picklesheimer, their terms are all expiring here in a few days. So I may get with you guys here in the next week or two to see if you like to, what are your wishes to serve again, or if you're looking for another adventure in your life. But I thank all y'all. All you guys have been great support to this board and bring a lot of knowledge. So I think this is a fun board. It's a good board, very knowledgeable board, and I appreciate that. So that's all I have right now.
All right, thank you very
Mr.
much.
Jones.
Appreciate that. Is there any other business?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
to Kevin, I'm interested in serving again if it's a...
Okay, all right, Miss Lester, thank you.
All right, being no other business, we are adjourned. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.